911, what's your emergency? The kid's voice cracked through the static. Oh yeah, my neighbor locked me inside his yard. He's holding us hostage. Blue and red lights washed over my fence minutes later. That was the night everything changed. I wasn't armed. I wasn't dangerous. I had just locked my own gate. But in Cedar Ridge Meadows, that simple click of a latch was enough to start a war that would tear through the entire neighborhood. My name's Evan Carter, and what I'm about to tell you isn't fiction. It's what happens when power, pride, and one HOA president go too far. This is Tomato Tales. 2 years earlier, my wife Lena and I thought we'd found peace. A quiet cul-de-sac, creek behind the fence. The kind of home where your dog can run free and you actually know your neighbors by name. Then the Cranes moved in. Marjorie Crane, our new neighbor, wasn't just talkative. She was territorial. Within 6 months, she'd declared herself HOA president, and suddenly, our peaceful street turned into her personal empire. Mailboxes were repainted to regulation beige. Holiday lights came down on her schedule. And if your trash bins lingered too long at the curb, you'd find a bright pink citation taped to your door. But her son Trent was the real problem. 17, loud, reckless, and obsessed with his dirt bike. He discovered my side yard one afternoon. Long, sloping, perfect for cutting through to the trails by the creek. They tore through it like it was a racetrack. Engines screaming, dust flying, and my golden retriever Buddy bolting for cover. That was it. I went over to talk to Marjorie. Calm, neighborly, still giving her the benefit of the doubt. She smiled that polite, empty smile that people use right before they stab you in the back. Boys will be boys, Evan. They're just enjoying the community's natural trail. It's not a trail, I said. It's my yard. Her smile didn't move, but her eyes went cold. It's been open for years, she said softly. People are used to it. Then she looked at her son and muttered, "Keep using it. He'll give up." That's when I realized she wasn't just ignoring me. She was daring me, so I built a gate. Nothing crazy. 4 feet of cedar, same color as the fence, a simple latch. Clean, quiet, reasonable. But in Marjorie Crane's kingdom, reason didn't matter. That gate was a threat, and soon it would bring the cops right to my driveway. Because when her son called 911 claiming I'd locked him inside my own yard, he didn't just open a case file. He opened a war, and trust me, the story only gets darker from here. Stay with me. You're watching Tomato Tales, and what happens next will make you think twice before joining any HOA. Hit subscribe, turn on notifications. Blue and red danced against the cedar boards of my brand new gate. Raindrops hissed off the patrol car's hood as 2 officers stepped out, hands on belts, eyes scanning the quiet cul-de-sac like it was a crime scene. All because a teenager said I'd trapped him. In my own yard, Marjorie Crane stood in her driveway, robe cinched, voice perfectly rehearsed. "Thank you for coming, officers," she called, loud enough for every porch light voyeur to hear. My son and his friend were trying to use the public access path, and this man, she jabbed a finger toward me, has illegally locked it. They're trapped inside, trapped. That word hung in the rain like smoke. I wiped my hands on a towel, trying to stay calm. "Evening, officers," I said. "That public path she's talking about is my property." The older cop, mustache, eyes tired enough to write novels, walked to the gate. The younger one kept his hand near his radio, probably expecting a brawl over lawn clippings. Trent stood there on the other side of the fence, breathing hard for effect, phone still recording. "He won't let us out," he shouted. "He's holding us hostage." The older officer stared at him, unimpressed. He reached over the top of the gate, flipped the latch with one finger, and swung it open. Click. "This," he said flatly, "is how gates work." The younger officer bit his lip to keep from laughing. Trent blinked, mouth open, realizing his dramatic hostage act had just collapsed in one motion. Marjorie's smile twitched. "This is a public path," she insisted. The officer pointed at my neatly mowed grass. Ma'am, sidewalks are public. Backyards are hobbies. A single chuckle escaped the young cop's throat. Marjorie's face went crimson. Then a strange shade of purple no paint store carries. She stormed back toward her porch, dragging Trent by the sleeve, while the officers wrapped up their notes. Before he left, the older one leaned close enough that only I could hear. This might be over for us, he said quietly. But for you, it's just starting. Then the cruiser rolled away, its reflection rippling across the puddles in my driveway. For a moment, the night was still again, just the hum of the rain and Buddy's nails clicking on the porch. But peace never lasts long in a neighborhood run by Marjorie Crane, because the next morning, I'd find a crisp white envelope in my mailbox, an official HOA violation notice. The charge? Installation of an unauthorized structure. The structure? My gate. I nodded slowly. She's building her case. And she was right. The next day, I got a letter accusing me of unauthorized surveillance lighting. Apparently, motion lights now disrupted the aesthetic harmony of the community. That's when I realized this wasn't about rules anymore. This was personal. Marjorie had declared war, and she wasn't fighting fair. But the footage we'd captured that night, that was my first piece of real ammunition. You're watching Tomato Tales. Make sure you're subscribed. A few days passed without another drone sighting, but the tension didn't fade. You could feel it in the air, thick like humidity before a thunderstorm. Then came the knock on my door. It was George Hensley, one of my older neighbors, a quiet guy who'd lived on the corner for nearly 20 years. He always waved, kept to himself, and spent most of his mornings trimming his rose bushes. That day, though, he looked uneasy. He held his baseball cap against his chest, glancing around like he didn't want anyone seeing him there. Evan, he said, lowering his voice, you didn't hear this from me. But I saw her. I didn't have to ask who. He leaned in closer. That woman, a Marjorie, she was out again last night. Near your fence. She had some kind of clipboard and a flashlight. She was taking pictures. My stomach tightened. George, you're sure? He nodded, saw her from my porch, thought maybe she was lost at first. Then I realized she was standing on your property line. Lena stepped forward, holding her phone. Would you be willing to say that on record? George hesitated, eyes darting toward the street. I'd rather not. You know how she is, but if she keeps this up, I will. I thanked him anyway. As he walked off, I noticed Marjorie's curtains shift across the street, like she'd been watching him leave. That night, another letter appeared in my mailbox. Only this time it wasn't an official HOA notice. It was a single sheet of printer paper with no return address. Typed in bold font, stop filming your neighbors. Last warning, no signature. No explanation. Just threat. Lena looked at me, pale. She's trying to scare us. I folded the letter neatly and pinned it beside the rest of the evidence on our board. She already did, I said quietly. But fear isn't what she wants. She wants control. The next HOA meeting was scheduled for that Friday. I printed copies of the photo showing her outside our gate at 2:17 a.m. and tucked them into a folder labeled, For the Record. The meeting started like all the others, calm, polite, sterile. Then I stood up. I have a motion, I said, laying the photos on the table, for the HOA to open an internal investigation into the president's conduct. The room went silent. Marjorie froze for half a second before regaining her composure. Evan, please. This is out of line, I interrupted, because trespassing at 2 in the morning feels pretty out of line to me. People started whispering. George, sitting near the back, met my eyes and gave the faintest nod. He'd come. The vice president, a nervous man named Rick Barlow, cleared his throat. We should probably discuss this in private, but it was too late. The power balance had shifted. People weren't looking at me like I was crazy anymore. They were looking at her. Marjorie collected her papers with shaking hands and forced a smile. Meeting adjourned. She left before anyone could say another word. That night, for the first time in months, I slept soundly. But the peace didn't last, because by morning someone had slashed my car tires. When I stepped outside that morning, the sound of hissing air hit me before I even saw the damage. All 4 tires on my truck completely flat. Little slits, clean and deliberate, right along the sidewalls. It wasn't random vandalism. It was a message. Lena came out behind me, clutching her coffee mug like a weapon. "She actually did it," she whispered. I didn't answer. I just stared at the truck, at the way the sunlight caught on the faint glimmer of rubber shreds. Whoever had done it wanted me to see it first thing in the morning. I called the police. They showed up, took pictures, wrote a report. But the moment I said the word HOA, the officer's expression shifted. Not disbelief, just that tired, seen it before kind of look. "We'll file it," he said. "But unless you've got footage, it's gonna be hard to prove anything." Footage. That word lit a fuse. I ran to my office and pulled up the feed from the street camera I'd installed a week earlier. At 3:12 a.m., the screen showed a shadow crossing my driveway. Hooded figure, moving quick, crouched low. The face wasn't visible, but the outline was unmistakable. Smaller frame, robe, clipboard tucked under one arm. Lena gasped. "It's her!" I froze the frame. Even blurry, the profile matched Marjorie Crane perfectly. We took the footage straight to the police station. The officer watched quietly, rewound, and sighed. "Hard to confirm identity," he said, "but I'll attach it to your report." He didn't say it out loud, but I knew what he was thinking. HOA feuds are civil matters, not criminal ones. By evening, word had already spread. Half the neighborhood was whispering. People avoided eye contact at the mailbox. Others pretended not to see me at all. And across the street, Marjorie's porch light burned brighter than ever, her little symbol of victory. That's when Lena said something that changed everything. "If she's going to act like she runs this place," she said, "then let's show everyone what leadership really looks like." "What do you mean?" "We run for the board." At first I laughed, but she wasn't joking. And the more I thought about it, the more it made sense. Marjorie ruled by fear. We could fight her with truth. So I started gathering support quietly. George, of course, was the first to sign. Then Rick and the vice president slipped me a note at the next meeting that simply said, "You have my vote." Within a week, we had enough signatures to call for an emergency re-election. The notice went out that Friday. By Sunday morning, Marjorie's perfect smile had cracked. She stormed across my lawn that evening, red-faced, waving a stack of papers. "You think you can take my seat?" She hissed. "No," I said. "I think I can earn it." For a second, she didn't speak. She just glared, that cold, burning stare that could cut glass. Then she whispered, "You have no idea who you're dealing with." She turned, her porch light flickering behind her like a warning beacon. Lena watched from the window. "Evan," she said softly, "this isn't about the HOA anymore." She was right. It never had been. The re-election notice spread through Cedar Ridge Meadows like wildfire. Most neighbors acted surprised, others quietly relieved. For years, Marjorie Crane had run the HOA like a monarchy. She knew everyone's business, controlled every vote, every meeting, every landscaping decision. But now, for the first time, people had a choice. Lena and I spent the week before the vote talking to everyone on our street. We didn't campaign, not really. We just listened. Every homeowner had their own story. One man got fined for painting his shutters the wrong shade of brown. Another family was warned because their kids left bicycles in the driveway overnight. Every single one of them had a Marjorie moment. By Thursday, we could feel the tide turning. The night before the vote, I caught sight of Marjorie through her front window, pacing on the phone, voice raised. She looked like someone trying to hold together a collapsing empire. Friday evening came fast. The meeting room at the community center filled up before sunset. Folding chairs scraped against linoleum. Papers shuffled. The tension was thick enough to choke on. Marjorie opened the meeting like she always did, calm, composed, and smiling through her teeth. "Before we begin," she said, "I just want to remind everyone that this community thrives on order and respect. Translation, don't you dare cross me." Then she announced the election. Her name was first on the ballot, mine second. People filled out slips quietly, folding them like secrets before dropping them in the clear plastic box. I could hear my own heartbeat as Rick, the vice president, started counting. 5 minutes later, he cleared his throat. By a vote of 14-6, he looked at me and smiled. Evan Carter, a new HOA president. For a moment, no one spoke. Then from the back, George started clapping. One by one, others joined in, soft at first, then louder. Marjorie didn't move. She stared at the table, eyes locked on the papers in front of her, fingers gripping the edge so tightly her knuckles went white. Then she stood up. "I refuse to accept this," she said sharply. "This vote is invalid." Rick sighed. "It's valid, Marjorie. Everyone's signatures are accounted for." She glared at him, and then at me. "You'll regret this, Evan." She gathered her folders, turned on her heel, and walked out. The room stayed silent until the sound of her heels faded down the hall. For a second, I thought it was over, that the neighborhood could finally breathe again. But deep down, I knew someone like Marjorie Crane doesn't just walk away. She retreats, regroups, and strikes harder. The next morning, every house on our street woke up to a flyer on their doorstep. An anonymous letter accusing me of harassment, fraud, and misconduct. And that was when the real war began. Stay tuned. You're watching Tomato Tales. By sunrise, Cedar Ridge Meadows looked like a war zone made of paper. Every doorstep, every mailbox, every porch, each one had the same white flyer taped to it. Lena handed me ours with trembling fingers. "You need to see this. It was written in all caps, printed in cheap black ink, and dripping with venom. Warning, your HOA is under corrupt leadership. Evan Carter has been reported for harassment, falsifying complaints, and misuse of community funds." Misuse of funds? I hadn't even touched the HOA budget yet. It went on for paragraphs, twisting every interaction I'd ever had with Marjorie into some wild accusation. Even the police visit was reimagined. Authorities were called after Mr. Carter locked minors on his property and verbally assaulted them. Lena exhaled slowly, her voice shaking. "She's trying to destroy your name." It wasn't just an attack, it was character assassination. And it worked. By noon I could feel the shift. People who used to wave from their lawns suddenly avoided eye contact. A few crossed the street when I walked Buddy. One neighbor even tore down the Vote for Change sign we'd left in our yard. I called Rick, the new vice president, to ask if the board had received copies. He sighed heavily. "Every single one of us. Anonymous sender, but we both know who wrote it. Thing is, without proof, I can't take formal action." Proof. That word again. I opened my laptop, scrolling through folders of recordings, photos, and documents. I had evidence of trespassing, harassment, even the drone footage, but nothing tying her directly to the flyers. Then, around 3 p.m., George knocked again. He held up a crumpled piece of paper, the same flyer. "I caught her," he said quietly. "Last night about 1 a.m., she was out with a box of these, putting them on porches." "Did you record it?" I asked. He shook his head. "No, but I can write a statement." It wasn't ironclad proof, but it was something. That evening I printed every flyer I could find, photographed each one in front of the houses it was left on, and wrote a detailed incident report. Lena compiled the timeline, timestamps, footage logs, neighbor statements, all of it neat, organized, and ready. When I brought the folder to the HOA board meeting that weekend, the room fell silent. Marjorie wasn't there. but her chair was. Empty, untouched, and waiting. I placed the folder on the table. "This," I said, "is the line. Either we deal with this now, or she'll keep tearing this neighborhood apart." Rick opened the folder, eyes widening as he scanned through. "You documented all of this?" "Everything." He nodded slowly. "Then we take it to legal counsel." That was the first time someone said legal out loud. And that's when I saw what I'd been missing all along. This wasn't just about revenge for her. It was about control over something bigger than the HOA. Because when the lawyers got involved, they uncovered something none of us saw coming. Hidden accounts, missing funds, and Marjorie Crane's secret that would blow the entire HOA wide open. You're watching Tomato Tales. The attorney the board hired was a calm, sharp man named Daniel Ruiz, the kind who could read a contract once and know exactly where the lies were hiding. He didn't waste words, didn't crack smiles. He just asked for one thing: full financial access. Every transaction, every reimbursement, every check signed in the past 2 years. Rick and I handed him the files that Marjorie had refused to digitize. 3 heavy binders, neatly labeled, but full of handwritten notes and faded receipts. Daniel worked through them in silence, flipping pages one after another. The only sound in the room was the slow, deliberate click of his pen. After about an hour, he looked up. "She's been diverting funds," he said simply. Lena leaned forward. "How much?" He tapped a page. "Roughly $12,000, HOA payments coded as maintenance, landscaping, community improvement. But the vendor names?" He turned the book around. Fake. All of them. Every so-called contractor led to an account under an alias, MC Holdings. Marjorie Crane. My stomach twisted. "So she's been stealing from us?" "Not just stealing," Daniel said. "She's been doing it carefully, spreading it out, small amounts at a time so no one would notice. Classic siphoning." Rick rubbed his forehead. "If we take this public, the whole neighborhood's going to explode." "She's already done that," I said quietly. That night, Lena and I sat at the kitchen table staring at the evidence spread out like a crime board. Every piece told the same story. One woman's obsession with power, disguised as community service. Lena reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "You're not just fixing a neighborhood, Evan. You're exposing something bigger." The next morning, Daniel helped us draft a report to file with local authorities. It wasn't about revenge anymore. It was about accountability. But even as I sealed the envelope, part of me hesitated. Marjorie had eyes everywhere. She'd know what we were doing before the ink dried, and she did. That evening, I found her standing at the edge of my driveway. No clipboard this time, just a quiet, dangerous calm. "Was it worth it?" she asked. I didn't answer. She stepped closer, her voice low and sharp. "You think you've won something, but people like me don't lose. We wait." Then she smiled, a small, cold curve of her lips, and walked away. Lena came out moments later. "What did she say?" "Nothing," I lied, but my gut told me it wasn't over. And that night, the security light caught something new. A car parked across the street with its lights off, engine running, and a figure sitting inside, watching. The police report was filed. The evidence was undeniable. But just when it seemed justice was closing in, Marjorie Crane vanished, leaving behind more questions than answers. 2 days after filing the report, Marjorie Crane disappeared. No one saw her car leave. No neighbors heard her pack. It was like she'd evaporated overnight, leaving behind a spotless lawn, empty windows, and a "for sale" sign that hadn't been there the day before. Rick called me early that morning. "She's gone," he said, disbelief thick in his voice. House is cleared out, no forwarding address. The realtor says she moved out of state. Out of state. Just like that, the woman who'd turned my life upside down. Gone without a trace. Lena didn't believe it. People like her don't run, she said. They scheme. Still, the evidence we'd filed spoke for itself. The county auditors confirmed Daniel's findings. Fake vendor accounts, forged invoices, stolen HOA funds. The case was officially under investigation, but without Marjorie present, progress crawled. The HOA froze her accounts and voided her authority. Yet something about the silence that followed felt wrong. Too controlled. Too planned. The neighborhood, once hostile and divided, slowly relaxed. People started talking again. George came over one evening with a bottle of whiskey and 2 glasses. "Guess it's finally over," he said, raising a toast. I wanted to believe him. For a while I did. Then 1 week later the letters came. No envelope this time, just single sheets slipped under doors. Same neat typeface, same cheap paper. But the tone was different. He took her place. He took her money. And now he's taking yours. The signature at the bottom read MC. Lena read it twice, her voice low. "You don't think—" I shook my head. "She's gone, Lena. Probably trying to scare us, but then I saw the last line. Printed faintly along the bottom margin. See you soon." That night, I checked the camera feeds twice. Nothing. Just the quiet hum of a street that had seen too much. Then, around 2:45 a.m., the motion sensor light flicked on. I glanced at the monitor and froze. Someone was standing at the gate, hood up still, watching. The figure didn't move for nearly a full minute. Then slowly it turned and walked away. When I checked the footage in the morning, the timestamp was there, but the file itself was gone. Corrupted. Every other clip saved fine. Except that one. It was like someone had been inside the system. Lena didn't say a word. She just unplugged the router, sat down beside me and whispered, "She's back." Marjorie Crane might have vanished from Cedar Ridge Meadows, but her shadow hadn't gone anywhere. And what she left behind was about to pull us into something far darker than an HOA feud. 2 weeks passed before the realtor officially reopened Marjorie Crane's property for viewing. By then, curiosity had infected the whole neighborhood. Everyone wanted to see what the Queen of Cedar Ridge Meadows left behind. Rick called me that morning. "They're letting board members in for an inspection," he said. "You should come. It's strange." Strange was an understatement. When I stepped inside, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Lemon cleaner, heavy and sharp, like someone had tried too hard to erase something. The house looked perfect at first glance. Every curtain straight, every counter wiped clean, every picture frame empty. But under that surface perfection, something felt wrong. The walls were bare, but you could see faint outlines where photos had once hung. Lighter patches in the paint, forming the shapes of people who'd been scrubbed from memory. In the study, the realtor pointed toward a locked cabinet. "We don't have the key," she said. Rick looked at me, shrugged, and said, "We're the HOA now, right?" He pried it open carefully with a screwdriver. Inside were dozens of notebooks, identical black covers, no labels. I picked one up and flipped it open. The handwriting was precise, looping, almost beautiful, but the words inside were chilling. Evan Carter, unstable, obsessive, manipulative. Wife may be complicit. Objective, contain influence. Restore order. Lena's name appeared again and again. My dog. Our yard. Even notes about what time I left for work. It wasn't just paranoia. It was surveillance. Each notebook detailed a different neighbor. Dates, behaviors, imagined violations. She'd cataloged everyone like specimens. Rick turned pale. This woman was documenting our lives. At the back of one notebook, taped to the page, was a photo of my house, taken from the creek behind the fence. I felt my stomach drop. She'd been on our property again. I flipped to the final pages, blank except for one line written in red ink. You think you're safe. You think this is over. But order always returns. Daniel, the attorney, arrived soon after. We handed over the notebooks for evidence. He promised to file them with the ongoing case. But that night, I couldn't shake the feeling that something else was still hidden there. I went back the next morning alone, with the realtor's reluctant permission. The house was silent. In the back room, the one facing my property, there was a faint draft coming from behind the bookshelf. I pulled it away from the wall and found a small vent cover that had been pried loose. Inside, a flash drive. No label. No dust, recently placed. I pocketed it and left without saying a word. When I plugged that drive into my computer, I expected more of Marjorie's madness, maybe notes or letters. But what I found on it changed everything. Back at home, I stared at the small black flash drive sitting on my desk. No label, no markings, just a single, ordinary-looking piece of plastic. But something about it felt wrong, like it was heavier than it should have been. Lena stood behind me, arms folded. You sure you want to plug that in? I nodded. If it's what I think it is, we need to know. The computer screen lit up, and a single folder appeared. Order Archive. Inside were dozens of video files, all time-stamped over the last year. I opened the first one. It was grainy footage from a drone. My yard. My fence, my house. Marjorie's voice played faintly in the background, muffled but recognizable. Subject continues to install unauthorized structures. Displays obsessive resistance to regulation. Subject. That's what she called me. Each file was labeled like a case study. Subject A1, A2, B3. Footage of neighbors, arguments, even backyard conversations. It wasn't an HOA archive. It was surveillance. Then I found a file labeled Redline. When I opened it, the video showed her sitting in that same study, late at night, talking to the camera like it was a confession. They think I'm controlling them, she said, voice trembling. But control keeps things alive. Without order, chaos wins. Her eyes darted toward the camera, and for a second her expression broke. Fear, exhaustion, something almost human. If they replace me, they'll destroy what we built. And when it collapses, it'll be on him. She didn't say my name. She didn't have to. The last file was newer, dated just 2 days before she disappeared. The footage showed headlights in her driveway, a trunk open, boxes loaded in. Then she turned to the camera one final time and whispered, "If you're watching this, it's already too late." The screen went black. Lena covered her mouth. She recorded her own exit. But something in that last clip bothered me. The faint reflection in the window behind her. Not trees, not streetlights, a face. Someone else was there. I paused the video, zoomed in, and froze. It was Rick. He stood in the doorway behind her, half hidden, looking straight at the camera. Marjorie Crane hadn't vanished alone. And now, the man sitting beside me in every meeting might have been part of it all along. For hours, I just stared at that frozen frame. Rick's face half lit behind Marjorie, his expression blank, unreadable. The man who had helped me bring her down was standing right there the night she vanished. Lena leaned over my shoulder, whispering, "It can't be him." But it was. The reflection was clear enough to kill any doubt. I replayed the video again and again, frame by frame, each time noticing something new. Rick wasn't just in the background. He was watching her pack boxes. At one point he reached for something off-screen, and Marjorie flinched. That's when I noticed the faint sound buried under the audio. A single muffled thump. Then static. Then nothing. The file ended there. I sat back, heart pounding. He wasn't helping her, I said quietly. He was with her. The next HOA meeting was tense. Rick sat across from me, calm, collected. Too calm. I tried to act normal, but every word he spoke felt like a lie. After the meeting, I waited for everyone to leave. Then I confronted him outside near the parking lot lights. "I know you were there," I said. "The night she left." He froze for half a second. "What are you talking about?" "I saw the footage. From her house. You were with her." He didn't deny it. He just looked away and said, "You shouldn't have gone back there." My blood ran cold. "What did you do, Rick?" He turned back, his eyes empty. "You wanted her gone, didn't you? You wanted peace. Well, I gave it to you." Before I could answer, he walked away. No explanation, no guilt, nothing. That night I called Daniel, the attorney, and told him everything. He advised me to hand over the flash drive immediately. If there's evidence of foul play, it needs to go to the police. I did. But when the detectives checked the drive 2 days later, all the files were gone. Every folder, every clip. The drive was completely blank. Only one new file remained, created after I turned it in. A text document titled, "Order Restored." Inside, a single line, "You wanted control. Now you have it." Marjorie's house was sold within a month. Rick moved away without warning. And though life in Cedar Ridge Meadows slowly returned to normal, I still see that message sometimes, flickering on my home monitor like it's trying to open itself. This isn't the end of the story. It's just the echo that refuses to fade. You're watching Tomato Tales. If you're still here, hit subscribe. We're diving into a new story. One that proves some fences don't keep danger out. They keep it trapped inside.